This is Taiku number 91, the 91st Taiku in the Babylonian Talmud. It appears in the tractate Nazir, page 64a, Samach Dalet Amud Aleph. Boi Rame Barchama Meis Bichli Uchli Tzaf al Pnei Mayim Mahu Batar Kli Azlinan or Batar Mita Azlinan. With regard to this halacha of a floating impurity, Rami Bar Chama raises a dilemma. If there is a corpse in a vessel, and the vessel is floating on water, and one did not overlie it, but might have touched it, what is the halacha? Do we go according to the floating vessel, or do we go according to the corpse, which is resting on a solid surface? Im timtze lomar batar kli azlinan met al gam sheretz mahu kevan dahai tumat erev v'hai tumat shiva keman dimachata tuma b'chli damya or dima tuma semichta hi. If you say that we go according to the vessel and one is rendered ritually impure, the following question arises. If a corpse is placed on top of the carcass of the creeping animal, which is floating on water, what is the halacha? Do we say that since this impurity of a creeping animal is an impurity for an evening, meaning that it lasts one day, and this impurity imparted by a corpse is an impurity for 7 days, it is considered as though the impurity imparted by a corpse were placed in a vessel, and he is impure? Or perhaps the fact that both a corpse and a creeping animal impart impurity means that it is one solid impurity, and because the creeping animal is floating, he is pure. V'im timtze lomar keman demachata tuma b'chli damya v'tamei vadai sheretz al gabe nevela u'nevela tzafa mahu kevan netarvayo tumat erev inun tumat semichtahi or dilma hai kezahit v'hai kadasha. And if you say that due to their different levels of impurity, it is considered as though the impurity were placed in a vessel and therefore one is definitely impure, one can raise an additional dilemma. If a creeping animal is atop an unslaughtered animal carcass, and the animal carcass is floating, then what is the halacha? Do we say that since they are both examples of an impurity for an evening, it is considered a single solid impurity? Or perhaps here too they are different, as this one, the carcass, renders items impure when it is the amount of an olive bulk, and this one, the creeping animal, does so when it is the amount of a lentil bulk. In that case, the animal carcass and the creeping animal should be considered separate items, and it is as though the impurity is placed in a vessel and he is impure. Sheretz al gabe sheretz mahu. Hani vadai chad shiuradinu. Odil makevan demis nepaski mehadadi la. If in that case they are considered separate, then one can also ask, if a creeping animal is positioned atop another creeping animal, what is the halacha? Do we say that these certainly have the same measurement with regard to transmitting impurity, and that they consequently should be viewed as a single floating item, or a single floating item, which means he is pure? Or perhaps, since they are separate from each other and are not in fact a single item, they are not considered as one unit. V'im timtze lomar sheretz al gabe sheretz kevan paski mahadadi keman dimancha b'chli dami sheretz al gabe nevela shinim mocha mahu kevan dini mocha havya le mashke. And if you say that In the case of a creeping animal, atop a creeping animal, since they are separate from each other, it is considered as though the impurity were placed in a vessel and is not floating. One can raise an additional dilemma. If a creeping animal is placed atop an animal carcass that had dissolved, what is the halacha? Do we say that since it has dissolved, it has become liquid, and therefore it is as though the creeping animal were floating on liquid? Or perhaps this carcass is still considered food rather than a liquid, and the creeping animal is on a solid surface. Ve'im timse lomar diuchlehu sheretz al gabi shichva zera ma'u ve'im timse lomar kevan mi'akra havele ki uchla sheretz al gabi mechatos umechatos tzafin al gabi hamayim ma'u lo yadinan teiku. And if you say that a dissolved animal carcass is considered food, one can raise an additional dilemma. If a creeping animal was placed on top of semen, which is certainly liquid, what is the halacha? Is this creeping animal considered a floating impurity? And if you say that once semen is ejaculated from the body, it is considered like food rather than drink, as it is viscous, one can raise an additional dilemma. If a creeping animal was placed atop waters of purification, meaning the water into which the ashes of the red heifer are mixed, which becomes highly viscous, and the waters of purification are floating on water, what is the halacha? The Gemara responds, we do not know the answer to any of these questions, and therefore the dilemmas shall stand unresolved. This is a Taiku with a bunch of questions. So really 317 it's a lot more than 317.